Hey, how's it going, guys? So from the previous video, we learned how to set up authentication for Azure Storage API. In this lesson, we're going to take a look at 6 examples on how to manage Azure Blobs with Azure Storage API in Python. Alright, so the first example is going to be list all the containers in an Azure's account. Next, we're going to list all the blobs. Basically, those are file objects in a given container. Then we're going to upload a list of files. So for demonstration purpose, in my project folder, I have this dbt folder. And inside this folder, I have a list of folders. So if we look at this folder right here, under each subfolder, I have a list of folders that I want to upload based on the structures. So basically, we can have multiple layers of subfolders. And for this folder right here, we have 3 files that I want to upload. But for other folders, we don't know how many layers of subfolders that we have. So basically, I'm going to show you how to write a Python script to basically iterate each folder and store the folder structure and upload every single files based on the given folder directory. So in this case, I'm going to directly upload this dbt folder to my Azure storage account. Next, we're going to download a file, delete a file, and lastly, we're going to delete the container that we created. Actually, I didn't have that example somewhere. All right, so let me add that to my list. So create a container. So lastly, I'm going to show you how to delete a container that was created from the first example. All right, so first, create a blank Python script, and I'll name my Python script demo.py. From the import statement, I'm going to import the OS module, and from azure.storage.blob, I'm going to import this blob service client class to connect to my Azure's account. And I also want to import this resource exists exception type from azure.code.exceptions. Now let me go into my Azure's account, and I'll be using this JJ demo storage account. Now first I need to get my API key. So go down to access keys. And basically you want to display the connection string. And I'll copy the string and I'll create a variable in my script. I'll call this variable storage connection string. And I'll paste the string here. So here from blob service client class, I'm going to reference the found connection string method. And I'll pass the storage connection string variable. And if I simply run this code block, and that's going to create my service client object that link to my JJ demo account storage account. Now at this point, we have successfully connected to our Azure's account using Python. Now for the first example, I'm going to create an empty container. So here I'm going to create a variable to define the container name that I want to create. And I'll name the container dbt, let's do dbt container. Now if we want to create a new container, we need to use the create container method. But if we want to connect to a container that is already created, in that case, you want to use this get container client method. And you'll pass the container's ID to link to that container. And because I haven't created a container, so I'm going to use this create container method. Now if I go ahead and run these 2 lines, right, so I'm getting yeah. Oh, right, so I forgot I cannot have any special character in my container name. I'll name the container dbt container. Now let me try again. And that's going to create my dbt container. If I simply print the container client object, and it's going to basically return as a container client object. Now using this object, we can retrieve the metadata of the container that I just created. Now if I go to containers, and here's the dbt container that I just created. Right, so currently there's nothing inside this dbt container. But let's assume that you have multiple containers in your storage account. and I want to figure out each container's name. In that case, from the blob service client object, we can use the list containers method, and I can specify if I want to include the metadata when I return the containers list. Right, so if I go ahead and run this loop, so this line right here is going to create a list that contains all my containers. Then I can iterate to this all containers object to give me each container's information. Now, if we look at the output, and because I only have one container, so it's only going to return one item from the all containers list. And from the output, we have the container's name, the last time the container is modified, the time zone type used, and a couple other information that I'm pretty sure you can go to the list on your own. Right, so let's see. Actually, I want to move this item to here because right now I don't have any file uploaded to my container. Alright, so this example is going to upload a list of files from my DBT folder. Now, let's say I want to upload this DBT folder based on this folder structure right here. Now, normally I see a lot of people will basically write the file path or the folder path individually. Now, as a decent programmer, we want to make sure that everything we write is dynamic. Right, so this is going to be the script that I generally use to upload my folders to Azure Storage. Now let's look at this code block. Right, so first I'm defining my root directory. So this is going to be the parent folder that contains all the files and folders. And when I upload this DBT folder to my Azure storage, it's going to create a folder under this DBT container. Then I'm going to create a variable to point to my project folder, which is going to point to this directory right here. Now the file directory is going to point into the folder that contains all the files and folders. So in this case, it's going to be the project folder path followed by DBT folder. Now to iterate each file and folder in this DBT folder, I'll be using the os.walk method. So basically, I want to use this function to give me every single file path. Now let me go ahead and run these 3 lines. Now if I print file directory, and it's going to return as a generated object. Now if I iterate the generated object, so here I'm going to simply insert a print statement here, and I'll run these 2 lines. I pressed the wrong shortcut. Right, so if I run this loop right here, so noticing that this walk method is going to basically return every single folder and file path in a tuple object. Now I'm not going to go to how the walk method works, but for now I just want to show you how we can upload this folder directly to our Azure storage account. Now let me recreate the generator. Right, so here I'm going to iterate each folder, and within each folder I'm going to iterate each file. And because this can be a chance that the file it exists, in that case, I can raise this resource exists here to indicate that the file it exists in my Azure storage. Then I want to use the continue statement to skip to the next item. For other issues, I want to raise an exception and I want to stop the operation. Right, so let's go inside this try block. Now this line here is going to define the file path that I want to upload to my Azure storage. So this code here is going to define the file path or the blob path in an Azure container. So basically I'm assigning the root directory from this blob root directory variable. And when I upload the file, I don't want to write the entire file directory from my PC. I simply just want to create a simplified root directory path to assign to this blob object. And once we define the file path or the blob path, we can create the blob object using blob service client .get blob client method. And here we need to specify the container ID followed by the blob path. Then we need to create the Azure file using the upload blob method, and we'll provide the file data. Right, so that's basically the script itself. Now, if I go ahead and run this code block, now it's going to basically iterate my dbt folder. So it's going to basically go to every single folder, including subfolders or subfolders, and it's going to upload every single file. Right, so here I'm going to refresh my containers page. Right, so here's the dbt folder. Right, so that does not look correct. Here, let me fix the code. Now let me go back. So unfortunately, you cannot delete a folder in Azure Storage. If you want to delete a subfolder, you have to delete the files in the subfolder one by one. And because I want to go to the examples in a logical order, but for now, I'm going to manually delete the folder, actually not folder, container. Right, so I need to go back. Now let's debug the issue. All right, so here let me go ahead and recreate the container. Oh, so right now Azure is still deleting the container. All right, this should be finished by now. Okay, I'll refresh the page. All right, so here's the dbt container. All right, so let's see. So this is going to be my root directory. And I'll create my working directory as well. File directory. All right, so I'm going to let's see, how should I do this? I'll put a break right here. And I'll simply run these 4 lines. Here, I'll put a break right here. I'll simply run these 3 lines and to stop at the first iteration in the second loop. All right, so if I print file, now it's going to return just the file name. So I think I know what the issue is. Let me create a file path. Right, so this is going to be the file path pointing to the file itself. And since this replace function is not working correctly, so it looks like the issue is this replace function cannot locate this folder path right here, this portion right here. Okay, because I moved the folder to somewhere else before. Right, so let me try again. If I run this line here. Now, if we look at the output right here, so this time we have replaced this path right here with an empty string, and that's what I want. Right, so if we look at the blob path, oh, I haven't created the path yet. It's using the old path. Right, so let me recreate the blob path variable. Now, if I print blob path variable, so here we have dbt as the root folder, followed by the subfolder, followed by the file name. Now, just for verification, if I go into my dbt folder, I should see this list of commands as the subfolder. Inside this subfolder, I should be able to locate this 10 run dbt docs.pdf file. Now at this point, everything looks okay to me. So I'll go ahead and rerun this code block. And it looks like the script is complete. All right, so if I go back to my address account, refresh, And here's the dbt folder. Now under the dbt folder, I have a list of folders. Let's look at this one right here, build dbt project folder. Right, so if I go into folder 2, and I should expect that there are a couple of subfolders. Now if I go into one of the subfolders, and here are the files. Oops. Alright, so let me go back. Alright, so let's look at another one. So for this one, we have multiple layers of folders. Alright, so if I go into getting started with dbt core, should be under 2. Build dbt project and build your first DAG. And here we have the models folder, followed by the 3 files under the models folder. Alright, so that's basically how I usually will upload my folders to an Azure storage container. Now let's say I want to list all the files in a container. Right, so let's say I want to list all the files in this build your DAG folder. Actually, let's do this. I'm going to list out every single file just for demonstration purpose. I think that's going to be a lot more useful. Alright, so from the container client object, which is going to be this right here, this line right here, when we create the container. So I want to take that container client object and I want to use the list blobs method. And I'll name the outputs blobs. Now if I run this line here, and it's going to create a list. If I print blobs, the blobs object is going to return as an iterator object. Basically, it works like an array. So I can iterate this blobs object. So I can say for blob in blobs. And some of the useful property that we can return, such as the file name, parent container ID, and I think the snapshot property indicates that whether if the snapshot was created. Now if I go ahead and run this loop, it will simply return each property's value based on the property field that I specified for each file object. So here's the file name, the continuous ID, where the file belongs to, and when the last time the file is modified in access. And here's the file size. Right, so let's move on to the next example, which is going to download a file object. So we're almost finished with the tutorial. Now let's say I want to download one of the files from my container. Let's do this one. This exposures dbt developer help.pdf. Now to download a file, we'll basically grab the file object path, and which we can locate it on the top. And I'll create a variable. Let's call this a file object path. And I'll paste the file object path. Now let's say I want to simply download the file to my project folder, which is going to be this folder right here, Azure Storage Blob Management. Right, so here I'm going to create another variable. Let's call this a target file. Actually, let me rename this to file downloader. And the file path is going to be the working directory, followed by the file name. So I'm doing this manually just to simplify the demonstration. But in general, my script is going to be a lot more dynamic. In the file path, we want to store the file. We can now go ahead and download the file. So here I'm going to insert a wait statement with open, followed by the file path. We want to save the file. We want to set the mode as read binary. Now name the context manager as download file. Now from the download file object, want to write the file content. Now, to retrieve the file content, want to reference the container client object .download blob, and provide the file object path. And to retrieve the byte string that creates the file, want to use the read_o method at the end. So this is basically the code block to download a file. Right, so here I'm getting a file now found here. Let's see. Oh, okay, I know why. Because I made a mistake. This should be write, not read. Right, so let me try again. Now this time I'm able to download the file successfully. Now if I go back to my project folder, and here's the PDF file for my address container. Now for the next example, for this exercise, now let's say I want to delete a subfolder. Let's use let's use this one, list of commands. Now let's say I want to delete this folder right here. So remember, using address UI, we cannot simply delete a subfolder, but we can easily do that using the API. And to delete the subfolder, so basically what I can do here is I can list every single file path, and I can iterate each file object. And by using the name attribute, I can check if this subfolder path exists. And if the folder path exists from the file object path, then I can use the delete blob method to delete the file object, giving the file object path. Now if I go ahead and run this code block, and we can see that all these file objects are deleted based on my this if condition right here. Right, so if I refresh the page, and the list of commands subfolder is now deleted. And lastly, I want to delete the container. So I can simply reference the container client object, and I can run the delete container method and runs, and that'll delete the container. So this is going to be everything I'm going to cover in this tutorial, and hope you guys find this video useful. And feel free to post your question or your feedback in the comment section below. And don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.